In the shadowed ruins of an outpost on Eridani IV, ravaged by alien forces, a sudden bone-jarring thud silenced the ongoing gunfire. Captain Mara Jensen sprinted toward the disturbance, her heart pounding in rhythm with her boots thumping against the gritty soil. Amidst a circle of alien corpses, she discovered a young boy, his small hand clutching a pulsing orb that dimmed with each fleeting second. As Mara reached for him, the ground vibrated with a low hum, and the orb's light crescendoed into a blinding flare that swept across the landscape, leaving devastation in its wake. The morning sun bore down on Eridani IV, casting elongated shadows across the wreckage-strewn colony. Captain Mara Jensen stood amidst the devastation, her boots crunching on scorched earth and twisted metal. The remnants of a fierce skirmish smoldered around her, filling the air with the acrid scent of ionized air and burnt flesh. Beside her, a small, lifeless body lay crumpled, a boy no older than 12. His hand was tightly wrapped around a device that emitted a fading pulse, its glow dimming with each second. Mara's heart clenched. She knelt beside him, her fingers gently brushing against the cold hand that clung to the device. "Report," she commanded into her her voice steely, yet trembling with barely contained emotion. "Area secure, Captain," responded Lieutenant Harrow, his voice crackling through the speaker. But the pulse, it took out the last of the Senrathi battalion. They didn't see it coming. Mara scanned the horizon. Alien bodies, caught mid-retreat, were strewn about as if the earth itself had claimed them. She turned back to the boy, her mind racing. This child, weaponized unknowingly, had saved them, but at what cost? "How many of ours?" she asked, her voice a whisper lost in the wind. "3 injured, none critical. Medical's already on it." Harrow updated her, his tone marked with cautious relief. Mara stood, her gaze lingering on the boy. His face was peaceful. The horrors of war hadn't yet carved their scars upon him. A surge of anger washed over her. Children. They were using children. She activated her again, this time connecting with Colonel Varick at headquarters. "We need to talk. Now," she insisted, her tone brooking no argument. The line was silent for a moment, then filled with the gruff voice of the colonel. "Jensen, I hope you're calling to report victory." "Victory?" Mara's laugh was bitter, hollow. "At what cost, Colonel? We're using kids as bombs now." "That's above your pay grade, Captain," Varick snapped, his voice cold and distant. "You know the protocol." "Protocol be damned," she interrupted, her patience frayed. "He was a child, Varick. A child with parents, dreams, and orders, Captain. Like all of us." The line went dead, the finality of the click echoing louder than the battlefield silence. Mara clenched her fists, staring down at the device still warm in the boy's hand. This was no longer just about following orders. It was about right and wrong, about the depths they were willing to sink to in the name of survival. Turning to her team, who watched her with a mix of reverence and apprehension, she made a decision. "We're going to end this," she declared, her voice resolute. "Not just the battle, but the war. Prepare for evac. We're blowing the whistle on this entire damned operation." As her team scrambled to obey, Mara looked once more at the boy. "I'm sorry," she whispered, a promise forming in her heart. A promise for justice, for peace, for an end to the madness that had claimed too many innocent lives. Today, the battle had ended, but tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Captain Mara Jensen stood rigid in the command tent, her gaze fixed on the flickering holographic display that chronicled the aftermath. The ground outside was still, but the air inside felt charged, a silent witness to the chaos that had recently unfolded. She tapped the communicator pinned to her chest, initiating a secure channel to military headquarters back on Earth. "Commander Sterling, this is Jensen on Eridani IV. We need to discuss Project Genesis," Mara stated, her voice calm, but carrying an undertone of urgency. On the screen, Commander Sterling's weathered face appeared, the stress etching deeper grooves in his forehead. "I've read the reports, Jensen. Tragic accident, but the weaponization appears effective." "It was no accident, sir. It involved a child, a boy. He was the weapon," Mara countered sharply, her words cutting through the air. Sterling paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Captain, you were briefed on this program. Collateral damage is inevitable in war." Mara's fist clenched at her side, her knuckles whitening. "He was just a kid, Sterling. Are we now defining children as weapons? What are we fighting for if that's our method?" "We're fighting for survival, Jensen. Do you think the aliens will hesitate to wipe us out?" Sterling's tone was defensive, his gaze shifting away from the camera briefly. "That doesn't justify using children as bombs. There must be a line we refuse to cross." Sterling sighed, massaging his temples. "What do you propose, Captain? We terminate the project, then what? Allow them to overrun us?" "No," Mara responded, her voice resolute. "We continue to fight, but we must find another way. We owe it to these kids, to our humanity." The screen flickered as Sterling pondered her words. "If you have a viable plan, I'm all ears, Captain. But any alternative you propose must guarantee not just survival, but victory." Mara nodded, her mind already formulating strategies and contingencies. "Understood, sir. I'll report back with options." The communication ended, leaving Mara in the dim light of the tent. She turned to face her team, who had listened in silence. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harrow, stepped forward. "What's the plan, Captain?" Harrow asked, his expression a blend of concern and resolve. Mara surveyed her team, each member battle-hardened yet unmistakably loyal. "First, we protect these kids. No more frontline deployment for the Genesis recruits. I refuse to let their blood stain my hands." "But the higher-ups won't approve," Harrow pointed out. "They don't need to like it. They just need to accept it," Mara declared, her determination unwavering. "We'll proceed the right way, with or without their approval." The team nodded, united around her with a renewed sense of purpose. Mara's heart was heavy with the burden of leadership, yet a flicker of hope remained. If they could alter the course of this war, perhaps they could still preserve what it meant to be human. As the team dispersed to carry out the new directives, Mara lingered behind, her eyes on the holographic images of the young recruits. Her unspoken promise to them was as binding as any military oath. They were not merely soldiers, they were children, and she vowed to protect them with every fiber of her being. The no-man's land between the human colony and the alien encampment stretched barren and bleak under the alien sun. Captain Mara Jensen stood alone, awaiting the appointed moment. The wind swirled dust and memories around her boots, each gust whispering tales of the war's devastation. Today, she was to meet General Thraz, not as a battlefield adversary, but as a diplomat. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily on her. The outcome might well dictate the future of her people and potentially end the use of children as unwilling warriors. Across the desolate field, a figure emerged, flanked by guards, an imposing silhouette against the scared horizon. General Thraz approached with a steady gait, his expression inscrutable. As he neared, Mara discerned a subtle unease in his eyes, marking the first occasion she had observed the alien commander anything less than utterly composed. Mara initiated the greeting with a formal nod that acknowledged his rank and the fragile peace of their meeting. "General Thraz," she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Thank you for agreeing to this discussion." Thraz returned the nod, his voice deep and resonant. "Captain Jensen, the events of yesterday were unexpected. We must understand what transpired." Mara inhaled deeply, her gaze steady. "Yesterday's incident was tragic, and it unveiled a truth we have concealed for too long. The child who died was part of a clandestine program designed to turn humans into living weapons. I can no longer stand by my superior's decisions." A flicker of surprise crossed Thraz's features, swiftly masked. Living weapons. Children. His tone mingled disbelief with dawning horror. Yes, Mara continued, we have been embedding these youths with devices that augment their physical and psychic abilities. What you witnessed was an uncontrollable outburst of accumulated energy, triggered by fatal trauma. It was never meant to occur. Thraz paused, absorbing her words. Your leaders must be desperate to resort to such measures, he remarked slowly. This war must weigh heavily on your conscience, Captain. It does, Mara admitted. And that's why I am proposing a ceasefire. We are pawns in a larger game, General. Our leaders send us to battle, while they strategize from the safety of their offices. It's time for those of us on the ground to forge a path to peace. Thraz considered her proposal, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. And how do you suggest we achieve this peace, Captain? Trust is not easily forged amid such deceit. Mara met his scrutiny squarely, through transparency and collaboration. I offer full disclosure of our operations here, and I request your patience as we dismantle the super soldier program. In return, ask that you halt your advancements and consider a truce. Together, we can expose and disarm the warmongers on both sides. The alien general paced a few steps, then halted, facing her once more. Your proposal is bold, Captain, and fraught with risk. You risk much by revealing this to me. I risk more by remaining silent. Mara responded firmly. This is our opportunity to alter the course of this war, to save lives, both human and alien. Thraz's expression softened, displaying the first genuine sign of empathy Mara had seen from him. Very well, Captain Jensen. I will contemplate your proposal. Let us convene again, with additional information, and perhaps with more hope for our two peoples. As he departed, Mara felt a surge of cautious optimism. The meeting had proceeded as well as she could have hoped, yet the most challenging task lay ahead, convincing her own people to embrace the peace she so ardently pursued. Back at her command center, Captain Mara Jensen faced a room of skeptical eyes. Her uniform was still dusted with the ash of destruction, serving as a stark reminder of the day's horrors. We can't continue like this, Mara began, her voice steady despite the fatigue that edged its timbre. Our enemy is not the monsters we imagined. They are fighting for survival, just as we are. Lieutenant Groves shifted uncomfortably in his seat. With all due respect, Captain, you're suggesting we negotiate with the same creatures who've obliterated our colonies. Mara met his gaze. I am, because I've seen that they too can be appalled by the depths to which we've sunk in this war. The child soldiers. Thraz didn't know. His reaction was genuine. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We've been using children as weapons, Groves. What does that make us? Mara continued, her question rhetorical, laden with condemnation of their own actions. Groves looked away, the truth uncomfortable, as did many others in the room. Mara knew she was challenging them, but desperation was a powerful motivator. Here's the plan, she said, turning to the holographic display of the battlefield. I propose a ceasefire, not just a pause, but a truce to discuss terms of peace. I will meet with Thraz again, present evidence of what triggered the incident today, and offer a solution that could benefit both sides. A heavy silence followed her words before Captain Rice, the head of intelligence, spoke. You believe they'll agree to it? After today? I do, Mara replied, because what happened today can happen again. The super soldier program is unsustainable, not with the powers these children possess. It's only a matter of time before another incident like this occurs, potentially on an even larger scale. Rice nodded slowly, and if the higher-ups refuse, you know they value this program. Mara's expression hardened. Then we go over their heads. This isn't just about tactics and weapons anymore. It's about the future of humanity, and what kind of people we choose to be in that future. With determination set in her jaw, Mara outlined the specifics of her plan. She would use the next meeting with Thraz to lay all cards on the table. The origin and nature of the super soldier program, the catastrophic potential of these children's powers, and the mutual destruction that could ensue if they did not change course. "I need your support," she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the room, challenging each officer to decide where they stood. "We have a chance to end this war without further bloodshed of our youngest. Let's be the ones who dare to broker peace." The room remained silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Slowly, one by one, her team members nodded. They were with her. Mara felt a flicker of hope. With her team's support, she could perhaps steer the course of the conflict towards a resolution that history might remember, not for the lives it took, but for the future it saved. She turned back to the display, plotting the coordinates for the rendezvous with Thraz. This was a gambit, but one worth taking for the chance to redefine the terms of humanity's survival. The charred battlefield served as a grim backdrop to the negotiation table, an unspoken reminder of the stakes involved. Captain Mara Jensen faced General Thraz across the makeshift table, her expression composed yet charged with intensity. The remnants of the ruined colony stretched behind her, silently testifying to the brutal cost of war. "General Thraz," Mara began, her voice steady, "this war has cost both our peoples more than we ever intended to pay. I stand before you not just as a military officer, but as a representative of humanity, seeking an end to this carnage." Thraz, his features hard and unreadable, nodded slightly. "Captain Jensen, your words carry weight, especially today. But peace is not simply the cessation of hostilities. What assurances can you provide that your innovations will not resume?" Mara reached into her folder, pulling out several documents. "Here are the full disclosures of the Super Soldier program," she explained as she slid them across the table. "And this," she continued, holding up a digital recorder, "contains my testimony, along with those of other key personnel, committing to the decommissioning of the program." Thraz picked up the papers, his eyes scanning the contents quickly. "And if I agree to this ceasefire, what then? Our planets remain at odds, resources still scarce." "That's true," Mara admitted, "but let's consider this a first step. We propose establishing a joint council, not just to discuss peace, but to explore mutual aid and resource sharing. Your people possess technologies that we lack, and our agricultural methods could significantly benefit your colonies." The alien leader looked out over the debris-strewn field, the weight of his decision visible in his posture. After a long pause, he returned his gaze to Mara. "And the young ones, the children trained as soldiers?" "They will be trained no more," Mara replied firmly. "We're dismantling the facilities. Our technological advancements moving forward will focus on rebuilding and healing, not harming." Thraz nodded slowly, the first hint of agreement Mara had seen since their discussions began. "This truce," he said, "it is fragile like the peace it promises, but perhaps it is necessary." "Peace is always fragile," Mara responded, "but it's worth the effort. Let's start today." With a solemn nod, Thraz extended his hand across the table. Mara took it, her grip firm. Cameras flashed around them, capturing the historic moment. "To a new beginning, then," Thraz said, his voice carrying a mix of hope and caution. "To a new beginning," Mara echoed. As they shook hands, the tension seemed to lift, if only slightly. Both knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of genuine hope. As Thraz and his retinue departed, Mara watched them go, feeling the weight of the future they had tentatively sketched. She turned to her team, a resolute spark in her eyes. "Let's get to work," she said. "We have peace to forge and a world to rebuild." In the distance, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the battlefield. It marked an end, but also a beginning.